Hi everybody, welcome to your lesson video for the fight for religious freedom in the 13 British colonies. So we're going to start by looking at our topic packet and the context and historical circumstances. So this is the background information for this topic. Many English settlers came to America searching for religious freedom. But even people who came to America for their own religious freedom weren't always willing to give this freedom to others. Several colonies, including Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, and Pennsylvania, were founded or created for religious reasons. The fight for religious freedom in the colonies would lead to two important founding principles of our nation: freedom of religion as an individual right, and the separation of church and state. And that's a term we'll be looking at as we continue through this topic, separation of church and state. I think most people are familiar with the term freedom of religion, the right to worship whatever religion you like without someone telling you that you have to follow a certain religion or go to a certain church or synagogue or mosque or whatever religion. You're allowed to choose whatever religion that you believe in. So I have a discussion question to start us out today. It's an opinion question, and I think as we go through this topic, you'll begin to see how this question really ties in with what we're going to be looking at. But for right now, I just want your opinion. If someone is doing something that you think is wrong, should you tolerate it? And in this case, tolerate means to allow something. When you hear the word tolerate, usually the inference is it's something that you don't agree with, you don't like, but you allow it to happen anyways. You tolerate it. So what I'd like you to do is add this discussion question to your journal. So you are going to go to your online journal and you're going to add a slide. So here we are under the classwork tab. We're going to go down to Unit 3 Journal, and we're going to open that journal up. And you should already have, looks like 1, 2, and a third slide. We're going to add a slide, choose New Slide. Now, what I like to do here is I don't like to use these text boxes, so what I usually do is either delete them, or you can go to Layout and choose Blank Slide. And then I just like to add my own text box. I think I've talked about this before. Just gives me better options with formatting the text. And I'm going to type in that question. But actually, you'll be able to, if you go to the classroom stream, you will be able to copy that question right from today's agenda. So when you do go to the agenda, I'll find a different class here where we've already posted the agenda. You will see that for the agenda for today, of course, the date will be different because today is Monday the 21st, but we can go here to the agenda or Monday the 21st of December, and there's your question. If someone is doing something you think is wrong, should you tolerate it? Should you allow it? So we'll copy that question, and we'll go back to our journal, and we're going to paste it right there in our text box. And then I like my text to be a little bit bigger so that everyone can see it. So I'm going to make it bigger. So once that's typed in, I would just like you to respond to it, your own opinion. What do you think? If someone is doing something that you think is wrong, should you tolerate it or allow it? And you're going to answer that in 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, now that you've answered that discussion question, we'll be coming back to it later. We will discuss that as a class, but first let's start by talking about the Puritans. So the Puritans were a group of English settlers who began arriving in America in 1630. And they arrived in this area called New England. At least it was nicknamed New England on this very famous map made by none other than John Smith. Remember John Smith from Jamestown? He went on to explore the coastline of what is today the United States up in what we now call the New England area. And the Puritans followed this map, and they followed the Pilgrims to America beginning in 1630. For the next 10 years or so, thousands and thousands of Puritans arrived. And these people were very similar in their religious beliefs to the Pilgrims, who were also called the Separatists. Because remember, the Pilgrims were trying to separate, to escape from the English church, which they had a lot of beliefs that did not go well with the English church. They were in disagreement with the king, who was the leader of the Church of England. And because they were being persecuted back in England, the Pilgrims left for America. They separated from the English church and decided to start their colony here in America. Well, the Puritans basically did the same thing. The only real difference between the Puritans and the Pilgrims was the Puritans stuck around a little bit longer. They stayed in England for another 10 years or so, trying to fix things, trying to asking the king to have their own freedom of religion, which was not granted to them. And so eventually they left England as well. They followed the Pilgrims here, but they were much better organized and better supplied than the Pilgrims were. And they started a colony north of Plymouth called Massachusetts Bay, which included 3 small towns, Salem, Boston, and Newton. Of course, Boston would go on to become one of the most famous cities in the United States of America, located right here on the Atlantic coast in what is today the state of Massachusetts, but back then was called Massachusetts Bay Colony. So notice we have 2 colonies here, Massachusetts Bay Colony, the Puritans, and Plymouth Colony, the Pilgrims. But after a few years, these colonies joined together into one larger colony of Massachusetts. And actually, from this point forward, we don't need to talk about the Pilgrims anymore, because for all intents and purposes, they're pretty much the same as the Puritans. These groups shared very similar religious beliefs. And so from this point on, we're just going to pretty much talk about the Puritans. Now we're going to jump ahead here to page 4. We're going to skip over page 3 in your topic packet, but we'll be coming back to it. On page 4, we have some information about Puritan culture and what it was like to be a Puritan living in a colony which had very, very strict rules about religion. And I think that's the best way to describe the Puritan colony, is it was strict. So let's take a look here at one of these excerpts on page 4. Try and take yourself back to Puritan times and see what you think of Sunday church going. These Puritan ministers gave sermons that lasted for hours and hours. So if you're someone who goes to church or even to mosque or synagogue, you're probably used to just going for a short period of time, be it on a Saturday or a Sunday, or whatever religious day your beliefs hold. Imagine going for all day. So in my family, I know I don't usually go to church on Sunday, but my mom does, and she's there for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half. But imagine if you're there from, say, 9 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon. Now, sometimes there was an intermission for lunch, and then everyone went back to hear more. There was no heat in the meeting house, and New England can get very cold. So the meeting house is where they went to church. People brought warming boxes with hot coals in them to keep their feet from freezing. Sometimes they brought their dogs to church for the same reason. A church official held a tickling rod to wake up anyone who looked as if he might be falling asleep. Here's a tickling rod. The dog whipper took out dogs who barked. If you were a troublemaker and wiggled and made noise, you could get locked up in the town stocks. Now, here's the stocks, right? You'd have to sit there with your hands and feet stuck into a wooden contraption, and everyone would make fun of you. So this is not a method of torture. It's a method of public shaming. It's a way to embarrass people and force them to follow the rules. So let's see what the rules were in Puritan Massachusetts. And let's read this section called Feeling Blue. Rules banning work, trade, and playing on Sundays, the Sabbath, which means the holy day, are still called blue laws because the Puritans wrote the laws in books bound in blue paper. You could be fined or punished for doing these things on Sunday: running, cooking, making a bed, or shaving. So the idea here is that on Sundays, you're supposed to be either in church or back at home studying your Bible. So the entire day is supposed to be devoted to religion. And I guess what they would do is cook their dinner the night before and then have it ready the next day. So not only were you not supposed to play on Sunday, you weren't even supposed to work on Sunday because the whole day, again, is devoted to religion. A man was whipped for saying that the minister's sermon was boring. Another was put in the stocks after kissing his wife on his return home from 3 years at sea. And celebrating Christmas was forbidden. It was popish, something that Roman Catholics did. Most Puritans worked on Christmas, unless, of course, it happened to fall on a Sunday. So those are what were called the blue laws. And even today, in some parts of America, I wouldn't say there's blue laws like this, but we still have some sort of leftover local laws, local rules that you can really trace back to the Puritan days. And one that I think of in particular is, at least last time I knew, now I have not tried to buy beer on a Sunday morning in a long time, if I ever have, but last time I knew, if you went to Wegmans or another supermarket and tried to buy beer or some other kind of alcohol, it's not allowed on a Sunday before a certain period of time. I remember going into Wegmans several times on a Sunday morning, say maybe 8, 9 in the morning, and they used to have signs out front, big signs that would say no sale of alcohol before, say, 12 o'clock noon on Sunday. And I guess the reason for that is, culturally speaking, in America for many, many years, so many people were Christians that Sunday, being the religious day, was, a day where you were just supposed to be in church. And if you were doing something like drinking alcohol on a Sunday morning, it was considered bad behavior, and probably still is by a lot of people. Because I can certainly think of better things to do on a Sunday morning, even if it's not going to church, than drinking alcohol. But it's just one of those leftover laws that sometimes you hear adults refer to those as, oh, it's one of those old blue laws. And I found it interesting that this is why, because they're actually printed on blue paper by the Puritans. So we're going to be reading page 3 in your topic packet: Puritans, Puritans, and more Puritans. And we're going to be reading for a purpose. And our purpose is, we are going to be looking for what beliefs did the Puritans have, and how can these beliefs help explain why the Puritans were so intolerant. Now, intolerant is the opposite of tolerant. If you are tolerant, you allow something to happen, even if perhaps it goes against your beliefs. If you are intolerant, then you do not allow that to happen. You do not allow beliefs other than your own. And if someone is expressing beliefs other than your own, you put a stop to it. So if someone is intolerant, they're not allowing freedom of religion for people who have a religion different from their own. And as we go through and look at these Puritan beliefs, we're going to try to figure out, well, why was it that the Puritans were so intolerant and so strict with their religious rules? So we'll take this reading step by step. I'm going to read for you, and I'm going to expect that you are going to be highlighting as I read. So I'll read this first chunk, and then we'll see if you're able to find anything about Puritan beliefs. So Puritans, Puritans, and more Puritans, from Making 13 Colonies. In 1630, the first Puritan ship, the Arbella, sets out for the New World. By summer's end, 1,000 Puritans have landed in New England. They bring a charter from the king. the charter of the Company of the Massachusetts Bay in New England. King Charles is happy to see the Puritans leave England. The charter is a document written by lawyers setting the rules that tell how the colony will be run. It allows the colonists to govern themselves. It is important to remember that from the beginning, English settlers expected to govern themselves. It is important to remember that each colony had a charter, a written set of rules. Those charters would evolve into constitutions. Can you guess what might happen in a community without a charter or constitution? Would you like to live in a country without laws? Would you want to write your own laws or have someone write them for you? You can think about those questions and then get back to the Puritans, who are beginning to pour out of England. Most of them go to the Caribbean islands, where sugar is creating great fortunes. But between 1630 and 1640, 20,000 Puritans sail for New England. Think about all those people risking their lives to cross the ocean and settle in an unknown land. It is almost as if tens of thousands of people today decided to live in outer space. Why did they come? Many came because they really cared about their religion and wanted to practice it in peace. They wanted to build a holy community where people would live by the rules of the Bible. Puritans believed that the Bible was the whole Word of God. They tried to follow its every direction, which means they tried to live very good lives. Although the Puritans tried hard to be good, their colony didn't work out as they wished. But how many people do you know willing to devote their lives to an idea they think is right? They expected their colony to be an example for all the world. John Winthrop, who was chosen governor, said, "We must consider that we shall be as a city upon a hill. The eyes of all people are upon us." One thing they didn't understand at all was the idea of toleration. Puritans came to America to find religious freedom, but only for themselves. They didn't believe in the kind of religious freedom we have today. But don't be too hard on them. Almost no one else believed in it either. In those days, each nation had its own church, and everyone was expected to pay taxes for its support. Suppose you didn't believe in the ideas of that religion. Too bad. You had to keep quiet, leave the country, go to jail, or maybe get hanged. Pretend you are a Puritan. You think that yours is the only true religion, so you believe the Reverend John Cotton when he says toleration is liberty to tell lies in the name of the Lord. Since you are convinced that only you Puritans are right, you think it is wrong to let anyone practice another religion. You believe that is helping the devil. You especially dislike Quakers. Your leaders call them a cursed sect. You use the name Quaker to describe religious people who call themselves Friends. Friends believe that each person has an inner light that leads him to God. People with an inner light do not have to rely on a minister to tell them what is godly. The inner light is available to everyone. This is a highly democratic idea, and most Europeans thought it very dangerous. They were used to kings and priests and ministers. It seemed reasonable to them to persecute Quakers. When Quakers came to New England or Virginia, they were whipped, sent away, and even hanged. Remember, you are a Puritan, and you've left your home and everything you know and love. You've crossed a fierce ocean to live as you wish. You don't want people with strange ideas bothering you. Democracy is another strange idea. If the people be governors, who shall be governed? The Reverend Cotton asks. John Winthrop, the beloved Puritan governor, who always tries to do what is best, calls democracy the meanest, lowest, and worst form of government. Next up, now that we're done with that reading, I want you to go back to your journal, and we're going to make another slide. And we're going to do this the easy way. We're just going to duplicate this slide. If we duplicate the slide that we already started earlier in class for your response, if someone is doing something that you think is wrong, should you tolerate it? If we duplicate that one by going right-hand click, duplicate, then we don't have to make a new text box. We can just copy over the top of this. So this is your original slide. Now we've duplicated it, and we're on, looks like slide five here. Now we can highlight this text, and right over the top of it, we're going to type Puritan beliefs. That's our heading for the slide. We're going to hit enter, go down a couple lines, and we're going to make a bulleted list. We make a bulleted list by going up here and choosing bulleted list. And I would just like you to copy down some quotes from the reading that show the beliefs that the Puritans had. These should be quotes that you highlighted and that we discussed. Now that we've read about the Puritans and we have some background information on their beliefs, which help us to understand a little bit better, perhaps, why they were so intolerant, why they didn't allow religious freedom, even though they came to America for freedom of their own, we're going to look at a Puritan whose beliefs were a little bit different. His name was Roger Williams. So I'm going to have you read about Roger Williams. This is chapter 17 from the book Making 13 Colonies. And I have a short highlighting activity. The directions are below in the right-hand corner. You're going to be highlighting 5 beliefs that Roger Williams had and what happened to him when he tried to express those beliefs. So that's the last task for today's lesson. Please complete that. And next class, we're going to look at Roger Williams and a couple other religious dissidents, people who disagreed with the Puritans, Anne Hutchinson and Mary Dyer.